welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka BlenderEd, Blender HD. If you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Wednesday, September 21st. It's whatever you want Wednesday, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to talk about Wednesday. It's up to you in the YouTube chat. We can talk about anything, right? NFL probably, stuff going on, stuff from last week, stuff from this coming week. Who knows? Give me those thummy thumbs. You know how much I love those. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit anything you want on the screen. Just keep on hitting stuff. Pause button, play button. Just hit the X button. Get out of here. You can do that if you want also. Suki Singh is here always early in the morning. Daniel Hutchings, hi. Joe Adamo, morning. Had a coaching session last night for the Discord people. If you're a RotoGrinders premium member, it doesn't matter what package you have. As long as you pay something, you get access to my Blender's Game Theory channel on the RotoGrinders Discord. And I do Zoom coaching sessions like 2 or 3 times a month. We're basically essentially private coaching, right? You just come on Zoom and talk about whatever the hell you want with me, right? Share your screen, do whatever. And we had a conversation last night using a word. I like the way that he used the word heuristic. Okay, I'm not going to tell you who, right? Because they're private conversations. There was a group of people there, but they're never recorded, so you can say whatever the hell you want. What a heuristic is versus what like mathematically technical like if you were to just go by a signal. I like using the term signal, or like I use like blunt, precise signal versus noise. The difference between something that is technically possible versus something that if you just used a heuristic, you'd probably be better off just doing it that way in the long run anyway. So what am I talking about? What am I talking about? Big talking point, maybe if you're on Twitter, I guess, was the Bengals defense, right? Last week. Bengals defense was projected to be 25% owned. Let's be clear. Projected to be 25% owned. End up coming in at like 40% owned. And there were a lot of sharper players. If you went to Results DB and you saw, like I could go there right now. I could go to Results DB, look at the Millie. I could look at the Millie. With the contest where you would think, well, obviously, well, why the hell are you going to play? Why the hell would you be playing a 40% owned defense? Right? So I'm going to go there. Let's see. We could find it in here. The main slate. Wildcat. I mean, even to look at the Wildcat. But let's go to the Millie. And I already have some users saved in here when this loads, because it's a big contest. It takes a while. Okay. Right, I look here. It's like Chipotle Addict, Ship My Money, Royal Pain, JBC, E. Hafner, Pet. I mean, a lot of this for basketball. Bro, the whistles go woo. Like we go here, Cincinnati defense, Chipotle Addict. And Chipotle Addict is one of the best NFL DFS players of all time. They'd say whatever you want about the two brothers, but Chipotle Addict and Papa Gates are very good at NFL DFS. Okay? I consider most of these guys to be good at DFS. At NFL DFS, at least. Right? And look, 40%. 22, 24, 40. Yeah, Ship My Money played only 2%. The Colts, 41%. E. Hafner, 38%. Oxenduck played 94%. The Cincinnati Bengals defense. Petty Theft, 50. Right? And Whistles Go Woo, 18. Bro, 20. And you're like, well, why the hell are you playing a 40% on defense? Well, first off, they were projected at 25. So, quite possible they would have had less had they thought that it would have been even higher. But we get down into the situation that I talk about on this show all the time. All the time. Okay? Lineups, not players. Okay? Just drill that into your head. Lineups, not players. You can play the Cincinnati defense, even if you knew they were 40% owned in a lineup, as long as you build the rest of your lineup around that ownership. Right? The problem with playing the Cincinnati defense, and let's say you played the Barkley and the Cincinnati defense in the same lineup, both 40+% owned. Well, you have to work pretty hard to get around it to find enough low-owned players that still project well enough to make up for the fact that you're playing a 40% owned running back and a 40% owned defense on a 12-game slate. You can do it. There are plenty of lineups. Plenty. I mean, there's 100,000 plus EV lineups you can make. So, like, there's still plenty of Barkley Cincinnati lineups that are plus EV, but they may be harder to find. There may be less of them, right? You may have to be very careful so you're not making too chalky lineup, or you're making a lineup that's way too low projected. So it's tougher. It's tougher to do, but it's possible. And especially if you're some of the top players that use, they're using simulations, they're using algorithms in their process that, like, they don't have to make it tough on themselves. Their computer programming is going to do it for them, right? It's gonna spit it out anyway. Okay, so they don't have to finagle and go, well, is this ownership high enough? Like the common man has to do, like I have to do, using blunter methodologies. But it doesn't mean that you can't make Cincinnati defense lineups that are plus E. Of course you can. You just have to build around it. So if you saw people that played Cincinnati defense in their lineup, that doesn't necessarily make them a bad player. Now, from using the term heuristic, right? What does that mean? What does the term heuristic mean? Heuristic. Well, heuristic definition, right? A heuristic process or method, a hands-on or interactive heuristic approach to learning, enabling someone to discover or learn something for themselves, right? Proceeding to a solution by trial and error or rules that are only loosely defined, right? So heuristic is more of a blunt type of methodology rather than a precise one. So as a heuristic, right, wouldn't it have been easier to build lineups that didn't have the Cincinnati defense in them, that were plus EV? Yes, it's easier. It's easy to do so. If you by rule, if you said, I'll never play a defense that's 40+% owned on a slate, no matter what the contest is, and you just build plus EV lineups out, that's fine. It's easier. Would you rather find your ownership discount at the defensive position that is highly variant, hard to predict anyway, or would you like to find that 40 percentage points of ownership by trying to find different a 3% wide receiver with a 7% wide receiver with a 4% running back? You can, but it's harder. So if you're a type of person that builds lineups bluntly, right? Even if you're using an optimizer, you're still using blunt settings, ownership caps, projection limits, thresholds. You're using the percentages and stuff like that. You're doing it bluntly. It's going to be very hard, much harder, not very hard, for you to determine, like, if a certain Saquon Bengals lineup is good enough, projection-wise and ownership-wise. If you would have just X'd out the Bengals defense, like, you don't have to worry about that anymore. What you're doing is you're out of those 100,000 plus EV lineups that are possible that you could build using any player, any reasonably starting player. That's what play whoever you want. I could go down. I could tomorrow's slate on Sunday slate. It's like I want to start my lineup with Hunter Henry. I mean, you can with anything you want. But out of the 100,000 plus EV lineups you can make, maybe 20,000 are the Bengals defense lineups. Out of 100, maybe not even 20,000. Let's just say it's 2,000. Out of the 100,000 you can make. You're basically saying, look, I'm just going to disregard that. I'm just going to null wave. I'm just like, yeah, I still get 98,000 lineups that I could choose from. And I'm just going to automatically say these 2,000, I may make a mistake on those. Maybe I don't choose one of those. One is slightly off. So I'm just going to, as a heuristic, just get rid of them, right? As a heuristic, groups, for instance, are more things like if I went in and said, I'm only going to play a maximum of one of the 3 chalky players on the slate. That's perfectly fine to do. That's a heuristic. Instead of you can have all 3 of the highest owned players in your lineup. Let's say, like this last Sunday, you had Barkley. If you wanted to build a lineup that had Barkley, Cincinnati, Devontae Adams, and Greg Dortch in it, you could. Just as much harder to, right? You're more likely to make mistakes unless you have a much more precise process. But you can. But as a heuristic, if you took all 4 of these, right, all 4 of these players and said max 1 in a group, now you don't have to worry about it anymore. You still can get the plenty of plus EV lineups. Of course, you're not considering you've as a heuristic, as a choice. You said instead of trying to run into possible mistakes, I'm just going to max 1 of them. I could make a lineup with all 4. Yes. I could make a lineup with 3 of them. Could make a lineup with 2 of them. I'm choosing to just eliminate those lineups out of that huge 100,000 set of plus CV lineups and say just no, max 1 of them. You could do max 3 if you want. You could do max 2. There's no right answer to that question. You could build 20 lineups that all have all 4 of them in it. You can. They're just less plus EV lineups with those. It's harder because you're playing the 4 chalkiest players on the entire slate. So if you're going to ask, it's like, well, what happens if I just group them out and play none of them? Well, you can do that also. All you're doing is just automatically not considering potentially plus EV lineups that have those combinations in them. That's all you're doing. That's not a strategy. You're not perfectly like, oh, well, if I group this out and that out, and then people create these like 74 groups. And it's like, that's not a strategy. All you're doing is just eliminating lineups that you just don't even want to consider. You still need to build plus EV lineups, but like, well, do I want to try to make like on the past Sunday? I just didn't play any in my 18 lineups. I didn't play any Derek Carr. That you couldn't build a lineup with Greg Dortch and Derek Carr in it? Of course you can. Of course you can. But I'm not. I didn't want to even bother making those types of lineups. I'm just that the 10,000 lineups I can make like that. I just not consider. I could do that after the fact, right? You could do that. I'm just going to build everything, right? And then go, okay, do I really want to play so and so in my lineup? It could be for any reason. See, the thing is, it could be for any reason at all. It's Wednesday. I don't play anyone named Willie on Wednesday. There you go, done. So, like, if you're playing NBA on Wednesday, and Willie Cauley-Stein is available, like, and you X him out because you don't play anyone named Willie on Wednesday. That's perfectly fine because you could find plus EV lineups that don't contain him. It's very rare. It would be extremely, extremely rare to find a player that would be required in a positive expected value lineup. Incredibly rare, right? Even in NBA, it's probably more likely in NBA, but it's still, even then, it's not like 100%, right? You'll get the 4K player that projects for 40 points, right? It's like, how else are you going to get those points at 4K? Because the other 4K players project for 18. So, like, if you did not play that player, you're just going to give up like 20 points in projection. But if it's a large enough field contest, maybe his efficient ownership isn't 100%. Maybe it's 99%. And maybe there are a couple of lineups that don't have him in it, right? But what's the heuristic in that scenario? If you have a 4K player in NBA because of injuries and the salary's never adjusted that projects for a 40-point median, you'll see what sharp players do. They jam them. You'll see 100%. You'll see 99% exposure. It'll be on all the lineups. But you'll see also people that don't understand the concepts say, well, he's going to be 78% owned, so I'm fading him. Without realizing that, yes, 78% is the highest owned player on the slate. But he's underowned. He's underowned. You should be jamming that guy in. Right? You should be jamming it in. And then that's where you get your edge from, right? You just take a look at the 22% of people that didn't play that guy and go, what were they thinking? Going through the YouTube chat, hit those thumbs. Joe Adamo had bad luck. Matt Mears had a good call. Oh, good call last night. Okay. Daniel's in the chat. Nerdy Tender's in chat. Didn't play the main slate because he was at the Broncos game. But he will sim it out and see how many Cincinnati defense I get. Okay. But Daniel, you have to do it with the projected ownership. Because I talk to people that run sims for themselves, and even they admit that if they knew it was a 40% owned, they wouldn't have gotten as much of this. Grant Brown, we could use the TDFS tools to look at a few players. Since we could. A lot of times I could look at that in Results DB. It's a little bit more visual. Let's see. T-Mac, good morning. Is there a formula you use to determine ownership and projection based on the tournament the lineup is going in? No, there's no correct number. And Daniel Hutchins says if a player should be played 100%, DK completely screwed up. Right, but that's why I said like it's an extremely, extremely rare scenario that there would be a player that should be 100% on. And whether or not he will actually be 100% on. Right, because if the efficient number is 100%, there's no reason not to play the player. Because the only thing that anyone else could do is not play them, and then you gain relative value from them. But that's the closest that comes is that NBA example. But T-Mac, the question is there a form? No, there's no. Stop. Okay, I'm gonna keep on going to the mindset. There is no formula for anything. There is no right answer for anything. Okay. Nerdy Tenor has correct answers. Right. He is the most he is precise. Daniel in the chat, but he can't tell you what to do because it's just he's running it through a machine learning algorithm, and he doesn't even know. It's learning on its own. Oh, so I guess these lineups are these lineups. There's no blunt way for Daniel to make lineups. There is a blunt way. I mean, yeah. Obviously, once you start seeing what lineups are coming out of the system, you say, okay, they all share. A lot of times, they share these types of properties, depending on the slate, depending on the projections, depending on the ownership, depending on 20 different things. And you go, okay, these kind of fit. Maybe these kind of fit what they kind of fit what Jordan's talking about, right? But he gets there much more precisely than I do. I have to finagle my way around and go, is this ownership worth this projection? I don't know. I have to make a comparative baseline somewhere. So if, for instance, in NFL, we could look at this Sunday slate coming up. And this is the ownership and projections as of Wednesday. It doesn't mean anything. These things will change. Who knows who's owned? Who knows who's starting? Who's going to be out? Right. But just based on these numbers currently, like if I just ran just a normal, let's say I just ran a very basic, just a 3+1 lineup, right? It doesn't matter what position, just whatever. Something to have a baseline from, right? Do I have everything at default or something? Yeah, I got everything here, right? Right. I don't care about this. I don't care about anything, right? I just want to see what's the top lineup, right? I can even stop it right there. There, I don't even need 10. So Stafford, Cup, Higbee, double tight end. I got Fournette and Perriman in there. I got something. But I don't even care about the players. I just care about the number. So like 140. So like the top in these our projections currently, the top lineup that has some type of game stack in it is like 140-ish. And is owned at around 100, 100-ish, 100 to 105. Okay. So basically, I'm going to be looking for lineups that have that proportion to it. So like here's one that's 93 at 140, right? So like, okay. So let me put this in. I don't want to have any lineup that's over, let's just even say over 100. I go to build rules. Now, how would I have known the 100? Do I just make that up out of my no? I ran it and saw what's the highest owned lineup based on like just a normal stack. So at least that's the max I go to. Right? So max total on I probably want to go even lower. I want to go lower than that because I'm not going to be able to get 140 median points at 100. We already just showed it. So maybe let's see what we can find at 80. All right, so I'm gonna build 20 lineups. What are the top 20 lineups? Maybe I limit limit that. If I want to exclude that, it doesn't matter. So we want 140. That like 100% owned lineup was like 140-ish. So how many projection points to get down to 80? Right? So I'm going to run 20 lineups and see. to get a comparative baseline. Is there a formula to this? No, I'm not showing you a formula. I'm showing you a heuristic. We can use that word. You say that word, people don't know what it means. That's why I just like saying blunt. Right, here's 72 at 138. So look, the difference in that lineup that we had before, the top one, 102, 140.72. This one is much lower owned, and it's only like what, 2 points, not even 2 points lower projected. It just has Shy Smith in there, assuming that his 7-point projection is correct. Right, so you take a look at some of these lineups, 72, 75, 78, 78. So these would be the range of lineups. And of course, these are still all Rams lineups. So let's say we were to take out Matthew Stafford, because we'd like to take a look. These 20 lineups, it's like 18 of them are Matthew Stafford and 2 are Kirk Cousins. But it looks like this is the range. 72, 70-ish, 138. Let's say we take out Matt Stafford, which means we're not going to get Ram stacks. And what do those lineups look like? From a projection versus ownership standpoint. We're going to run some. I don't even know. I don't even have to run 20. I don't have to run. Just whatever. Kirk Cousins. Right? We get Kirk Cousins. We got a ton of Mixon. We got Cousins with Dalvin Cook. Right? Because we didn't care. Then Josh Allen starts coming up. But these Kirk Cousins lineups are all about the same range also. 70s, 137, 138 in the 70s. Obviously for this construction, for the 3+1 construction. Right? And these would be the top level. So if we went down to like 60, I assume that we're going to drop another maybe 2, 3, 4 points. So let's go down to 60. We'll bring Stafford back in. We'll bring him back in. Let's set the ownership now cap at 60 and see what these lineups look like. I don't even need many. I mean, I'm just whatever shows up. Can we get lineups at the 60 range that are like maybe 136? Is that possible? Maybe. Okay, close. 135.77. Okay, we're close. 57% on 135 projection. 57, 135. 59, 130. Okay, in this range. So compared to that first one, these lineups are like only like 5 points lower projected or so. But they drop half the ownership, nearly half the ownership. Some maybe not 50% of the ownership, 40% of the ownership, something like that. Right? And you could still have, look, there's still plenty of Stafford lineups with Robinson and Kupp. Still all these Rams lineups. So if you're looking for a formula, there's no formula. Like these are all blunt methodologies. So you're not going to find a precise formula for anything. Put in your projections and see what comes up. And you go, oh, okay. If I just played a cash lineup, for instance, that would be 142, project at 142 and be owned 133. Right? Allen, Jacobs, Mixon, Olave, Juju, Cooks, Hawkinson, Fournette, Commanders defense. Based on the RG projections as of 10 o'clock this morning on a Wednesday before a Sunday slate. But in GPP, you're not playing these types of lineups. Like it's going to be, you're probably not playing naked Josh Allen, and you're probably playing some type of correlated lineup. Some, right? Doesn't mean you can't. Yeah, you can play this lineup. I mean, it's too high owned, but you can. I guess you can. In technicality, you can. Heuristically, you're not. So that's why it's like, okay, let me put a stack together and see what. And you compare the number to the ownership. The number to the ownership. Every slate is going to be different. Last week's slate, you couldn't get lineups that were this low total owned with some of the players projecting too well. It's like you'd always end up with a Barkley lineup or a Cincinnati defense lineup or an Adams lineup or something like that. So for the slate last week, these numbers are going to be different. There are basketball slates where like the median optimal is like 270. There's some slates where it's 330. Those slates where it's 330, that's where you know that when the slate's done on Twitter or on Reddit or something, you have people complaining that they scored 360 points and didn't cash. Right. And 270 on a slate where it's the median optimal is 270. That's when people like win a GPP with a 347, with a score that the next day they can't even cash a lineup in because they don't understand the relative difference between the slates. One slate essentially had very efficient pricing, and the next slate, 17 people were out, and there was value like this. It was not hard to just jam in 60 extra points of median value into your lineup because there were players that are 4,500 that project for 35 points, and a guy that's at 6,200 projecting for 58 points. I mean, like, because it was easy to build those types of lineups, so the median value of lineups are going to go up. That's why you can't have a formula that's just like, oh, what are the numbers that I put in every slate? There are nothing. And just like we talked about before, like all these build rules are all diversification settings. They're not, this is not a strategy. How many unique players should you have? Like there's no number for that. How diverse of a lineup portfolio do you want? But it's not going to get you to plus EV lineups in and of itself. Do I want to have, in my flex, do I want to run all wide receiver flex? You can. You could also run all running back. You could also run all tight end. Be like, oh, do I really want 100 lineups that are all tight? If there are plus EV lineups that are double tight end. There are less of them, but there still are. And it also depends on the slate. If Kelsey was was min price 3K, you'd probably be running a lot of tight end flex lineups, right? If Kelsey was 3K. Okay? So it's not something that's like, oh, you always do, you never do. It's all based on the slate and what lineups you want to play. Like I said, as long as you can get to 100,000 plus EV lineups, but you're not playing 100,000 lineups. You can't. Even if you're like, oh, I'm only playing 3 max. I'm only playing single entry. I'm only playing one lineup. Well, now you have 100,000 to choose from. People show me their single entry lineups. I get DMs or something. Right, the next day, it's like, I played this in single entry and it didn't do well or something like that. And they go, did I do anything wrong? I looked at the lineup and said, it looks like a fine lineup to me. They go, well, how do I approve it? It's like, you know how you could have approved it? By playing the players that did well. But how are you supposed to know that? I don't. So that, based on the ownership and projection that I know from the slate, I looked at that lineup and I know they're playing in a contest that has like 1,000 entries in it. And I look at that and I go, okay, that's fine. But you could show me 1,000 lineups. I'll say the same thing about. You show me something, oh, okay. Essentially, if you show me a lineup from last Sunday, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the lineup that I made in a small field GPP, 1,000 entry, single entry, and you showed me essentially a cash lineup, I would say, don't do that. This lineup is too high owned, right? You're showing me the Carr, Adams, Dortch lineup with Barkley in the Cincinnati defense, and it's like, well, instead of playing Albert O, I played Tyler Higbee or something like that, and that's what you did. I get it. That's not enough. Then I would give the feedback of that's not a good enough. That's not a plus EV lineup. And then some people say same contest, right? 1,000 entries, single entry, whatever. They show me a lineup that has like 8 2% owned players, and I said, like, I could only imagine how low the projection of this lineup is. And individually, those 8 players, I have no problem with individually, right? They're showing me a lineup. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that these guys are viable, but probably not all together, right? You're probably not playing them all together. Like, do you know the projection of this lineup? And it's like, I plug it in. It's like 28 points lower than any other lineup. And like, dude, you don't have to get that contrarian, right? So as long as you're not on either side of those spectrum, you can show me God knows any lineup. I'd be like, okay, that seems pretty good. That seems pretty good, right? People want these like, you got to do this. You have to plug in this. You have to put this number there, and it doesn't exist. And the more and more you search for the magic numbers, the less all you're doing is spinning your wheels and wasting time rather than learning the concepts of how to build plus EV lineups and then realizing, because you understand statistical concepts, that out of the 100,000 lineups you can make, most of them are kind of even with each other. from an expected value standpoint. Some may have higher standard deviations than others, but for the most part, once you get to the point of building good lineups, once you get to be on this list of, making 150 of them, even if you're just making one of them, once you get up to that point, then it just becomes it's a random number generator, right? Kind of at that point, right? It just what's going to happen? Are the Royals going to go off tonight in baseball? I have 3 of them, and you have 4 of those lineups, and whatever happens, happens. And we're making money off of the percentage of the field that is building horrible lineups, either that are too high owned or too low projected. But anything in the middle, who am I to say which one is better than the other? Now, like Daniel in chat, Nerdy Tenor, he could probably tell the difference slightly. But still, once you get in that range where you're not playing something that's too high owned or too low projected, with some amount of correlation probably, right? In baseball, probably you're playing a stack. That helps you. But you don't have to. Like I said, you don't have to either. There are going to be lineups that you can choose that don't have any stacks. Good luck trying to make that. It's hard. It's just harder to do. Right? Good luck trying to find those. So once you understand that, you know that once you get to that point, it's hoping variance goes your way. Like there's not like what more can I do? There's nothing. What more can you do? As long as you know that the lineups that you're plugging in are plus EV. And what heuristics can you use for that? You could study other players' lineups. Right? If you're like, oh, based on my projections, based on my ownership, I had so much. In half of my lineups, I played let me just scroll down. I'm just gonna be half my lineups, I played let me just keep on going. Brandon Ayuk, right? Like the way that I did my lineups, it's like I could not play Brandon Ayuk. Not for like a football reason, just like I put in the numbers and it's like all my lineups came up Brandon Ayuk. And then you're like, okay, that you could do that. I mean, that's not those still could be plus EV lineups. They could be. But then you go into results DB and you study and you go, okay, let me take a look at what a lot of top players did. Oh yeah, they didn't read that. Wow, where was their like not only did they not have a lot of Brandon Ayuk, but some had none. So maybe that's a signal that you screwed up somewhere. Maybe. It's quite unlikely that you figured something out about some player that no one else did. Okay? So that's why, like Results DB, studying other players' lineups, studying the slate afterwards is a heuristic. That's the word of the day, heuristic. And some players, I mean, this is not the only list of players. I mean, you could look at 50, 100 people just to get a sense of what their lineups look like. And if your lineups are like drastically off from a lot of people, then maybe you did something wrong. And if your lineups look kind of similar to a lot of otherwise sharper players, what else are you going to do? Seems good to you? That's a good signal, right? Are you placing, in the long run, more than 1.4, 1.6% of your lineups in the top 1% in large field GPPs? That's a good signal, right? But what can you do on a specific day? No, you just wait for variance to go your way. Build plus EV lineups and wait. It's like rolling a 5,000 sided die, as I'll say. You roll the 5,000 sided die, you're getting paid 50,000 to 1, which is 10 times the amount that you should be getting paid. But you're going to be losing 4,999 days on average every 5,000 days, or 5,000 bets, 5,000 slates, whatever. So as long as you know that you're getting 50,000 to 1 by building that plus EV lineup, all you're doing is just waiting for the number to come up. That's it. Is it going to come up today? Is it going to come up tomorrow? It could come up 3 times in a row. It could. It could not come up for 15,000 days, right? It could be whatever. That 5,000 sided die. But you have to realize that. So many people, it's 2 weeks, it's 2 slates into the NFL season. This is not including, the showdowns or anything, but just 2 classic slates. I've already gotten 2 messages of I didn't GPP players. I didn't cash any lineups in week 1 or week 2. Am I doing something wrong? My response is, come back to me in 20 years. If you still haven't cashed anything in 20 years, 20 seasons, right? Then maybe you got a problem. You go, what am I supposed to do? Wait 20 seasons? It's like, dude, there's like 18 slates. It's not even 3 weeks of baseball. If you told me you didn't cash, and we're talking about like single entry GPP, like a $12 fairly large field GPP, right? $12, something like that. The $50 red zone, or something like that. Like, dude, you could go 3 weeks in baseball and not cash. That would be told that would be a normal occurrence, right? Or you go 2 months and only cash 5 times in total out of 60 days. That's a normal occurrence. So after 2 weeks, what the hell are you supposed? How do you tell it anything in 2 weeks? Nothing. You can't tell nothing from just the results. Well, what do your lineups look like? Let me see your lineups. What did you play the past 2 weeks? And I look at them and I go, okay, they're pretty good. They're fine. You didn't have the Baltimore Miami game on Sunday. That's why you didn't cash. There you go. Done. Was there anything that would have put me on the game? No, you're not thinking correctly. It's not about predicting outcomes. You built that lineup. You built the lineup with the Tom Brady, right? Or Winston or something like Winston, Thomas, something like that. And because you were so contrarian at the stack, you played Barkley and you played Mixon or something. And it's like, okay, but I look at this lineup. I said, why wouldn't this be fine? Looking at the ownership, this seems fine. One game went off heavily, and the game that you stacked didn't. That's it. And then you look at the week before, and it's kind of similar story. It's like you took a chance on this game and ate the chalk in this 1 or 2 spots, and that wasn't the game that went off. Okay, now go on to week 3. It is what it is. What else are you going to do? The lineups weren't bad. It's 2 weeks. It's 2 slates. It's 2 slates, for crying out loud. Scorpion McScorp said the 33-33 milli was a bloodbath for the pros this week. Let's take a look at it. What is that called? The 33-33? The Mega Millionaire? Was that the 33-33? Oh, yeah, okay. I see the entry fee. Right. Obviously, some people didn't play or only played one lineup. I think Nerdy Tenor only played one lineup. That's what it looks like. But here you go. Take a look at the ownership in this contest. 51% on a defense. 46% of Devontae Adams. 37% Greg Dortch. Jeez. This is why I talk about the smaller the field of contest, there's more benefit in being contrarian. I'm not fully contrarian. It's just like don't play. If you didn't play the car stack, if you didn't play either of these last Cincinnati, Saquon, Devontae, Dortch, Carr, and just said I'm going to literally build the best lineup from there, the optimal or whatever, that would be fine for this contest. That's what I mean by being contrarian. It's not like being crazy. Just like the ownership is just even so much higher in these contests. Now, there's some people in here that did well. I mean, just because if you didn't play like 10 lineups or something doesn't make you. This is still a very tough field. Right? You got Wilson here, GSD4, Mr. Wonka Man, Court Jesters, the Pickler, Mr. Panther, Big T. Right? There's plenty of people up here. The Masterson, Ski Basher, Mr. Good Seats. I don't know, who else do I recognize? I don't know. There are plenty of people up here. What won this? The Tua, obviously. We all know what won it. Tua, Hill, Waddle, Andrews. But look, Saquon and Josh Jacobs. The winner of this contest didn't have Nick Chubb. You didn't need it. The 1,174 entries. So there you go. You didn't even need the best end. Look, you had Buccaneers defense. Here we could go down. I could probably find lineups here. Cincinnati defense. There you go. 4th place. Lamar, Waddle, Andrews. Right? I mean, this lineup is what? 227.72. $3,000 entry won $150,000. And look, Barkley and the Cincinnati defense. But look, Jalen Waddle is only 5% owned. Curtis Samuel, 17. Amon-Ra, 20. But no Adams, right? No Adams. Still had Dortch in here. Still had the defense in here. Still had Barkley in here. So basically no Adams. And built up the middle, which is kind of what I was talking about last week on the Game Theory show. Building these up the middle type lineups. Right? 227. But it's only 1,100 person contest. If you go to the large field Millie, 227, I don't know. I probably have to scroll 17 screens to find where that placed. But when chalk busts, it's so much easier to win. Here's whistles go woo. Lamar, Bateman, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra, Henderson and Higbee, Gibson, Dortch, you had Lamar, San Francisco defense, right? You have a 2% owned Bateman paired with Jackson. You have a 1% owned defense. You're fading. You don't play Barkley. You don't play Adams. You're fine. You're done. That's it. Do these lineups look all that contrarian? They don't, to you, they probably look, oh, these don't look that contrarian. But for this contest, it actually is contrarian. Because there's so much ownership on condensing on certain players that as long as you're not playing the combinations of those players, like, dude, you could easily just, okay, you're going to play Hill. You're going to play Gibson. You're not playing like, I'm going to play the backup running. I'm going to play fullbacks. I'm going to play 4th wide receivers. I'm going to play backup tight ends or something. You don't have to do that. You barely even have to do that in the Millie. But you have to do it more in that type of contest. So that's why you can get these lineups that are up there. Jovan Normandia, in the 919 video with James, you showed how to get to your 18 lineups. How did you use math to manually set I'm sorry, Jovan. I'm sorry. I just have to calm myself down. How did you use math to manually set the min-max exposures for your players? I don't think you understand. I don't set min-max exposures for players. And then what you're going to say is I looked in that video and there were numbers like 10 and 15 there. And I said, those were not input beforehand. Okay? I have never, once I these min-max numbers, I don't set before making lineups. I set them after making lineups. Meaning, I'm getting too much of a guy, right? I'm choosing, right? Like this past Sunday. I'm making thousands of lineups. I'm only choosing 18, but I'm making thousands of lineups. So I want to make candidate lineups, okay, to choose from. If I were to not do anything with exposures, if I were to generate 3,000 lineups, like 2,900 would have Saquon Barkley in it. And all 3,000 would have Cincinnati defense in it. But so how do I get the candidate lineups that don't have those? Well, I'm going to set something to say to give me less of them. That's it. Those numbers are only there for that. Oh, how did you know to play 15? I'm not playing 15% of anything. Those numbers don't represent what I have in my portfolio. They're just numbers to create lineups from. So, for instance, if we take a look at like on Sunday's slate, Cincinnati defense, Barkley, Adams, Dortch, right? These 4 players. Okay. If I were to not put a cap on the players and build candidate lineups, not lineups that I'm playing, lineups that I'm considering, I would end up with like 1,000,000% of all these guys. And probably most of them in the same lineup. Right? How do I not get that? Well, I could put unique players on 5. Right? But that doesn't solve the problem either, because I may get a bunch of them that have all of them together and a bunch that have none of them together. So what's a good heuristic to not get all these guys all together. So I'm building different sets of candidate lineups. Put them all in a group, right? I put all 4 in a group, and I set a max of 1. Okay? But what's the problem with that? What's the problem with that? Well, if I ran it like that, you know what ends up happening? I get all of the Cincinnati defense and none of Saquon Barkley, Adams, or Dortch in any lineups. Right? Because the defense projects well enough. Or I actually, it ended up being I get a lot of Barkley or the Cincinnati defense and none of Adams or Dortch. But I'm trying to build a candidate set of lineups. So I'm basically saying that max 1, I'm never going to have a max 1 of Adams just in any of the lineups that I'm even considering. No. I want to at least consider some, I want to consider some Adams lineups. The Adams lineups don't have Barkley. They don't have the Cincinnati defense. They don't have Greg Dortch in them. But I at least want to have some. But unless I tell the optimizer, tell it, please give me some Adams lineups, it's not going to. Because Barkley and the Cincinnati defense, from a point per dollar, how everything works out, you get more of. So what do? It's a group of 4 with a max of 1. So I set each of these to 25%, right? Because that equals 100%. I'm building 300 lineups. 300 lineups, remember, I'm not building these lineups to play. I'm building these lineups to consider. To build my 18 lineups, I built between research and between all the builds that I put in, I probably on between Saturday and Sunday built 15,000 lineups. Okay? So I built 15,000 lineups. Right? And once I saw that, like, I'm not going to consider any of these Richie James lineups or Greg Dortch lineups, well, I could just X those guys out. Right? Or I'm getting way too much of this guy, and unless I want to play a lot of that guy, maybe I don't need 70% of my candidate lineups to have him in it. Because now I'm a limit, like I only have so many that have other players in it. So how do I do that? I just set a max exposure. I had Amon-Ra St. Brown in like 7 out of 18 of my lineups. I didn't put an exposure. What's 7 divided by 18? 38%. I didn't put 35 or 40. That's not how I built. That's not. Those lineups were chosen. The 18 lineups that were in lineup HQ were chosen. I go through thousands of lineups, and then I choose the 18 that I play. Right? And turns out I had 7 or 18 of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Turns out I had 7 or 18 Ashton Dulin also. Dulin, based on his ownership and his projection and the types of lineups I was building, ended up appearing a lot. But how much Ashton Dulin do I want to play? That's a risk tolerance. I could have played 18 Ashton Dulin lineups if I wanted to. But you know the reason why I even was able to consider Ashton Dulin lineups is because I X'd out Greg Dortch and Richie James Jr. If I didn't cap them or X them out, those lineups that had Ashton Dulin would have Richie James. Because Richie James projected for a little bit better than Ashton Dulin. So if I don't put a cap there, I'm not going to get Dulin lineups to even consider. So that's what these numbers are for. They're for diversification purposes. They're not for strategy. One of the the worst phrases in DFS these days is above the field and below the field. That doesn't mean anything. You have to talk about the lineup level, not the exposure level. Good players understand this. So if I were to talk to Squirrel Patrol, right? And Squirrel Patrol's like, yeah, I was over the field on so-and-so. I know that he means that he had more exposure to that guy because he was less owned than his projection, and he fit into plus EV lineups that naturally would look a different way. So it's not a matter of like, oh, well, he played a lot of that guy. Well, he played a lot of the guy, and he also knows how to build good lineups. Dude, you could play 50% of a guy and have them all in bad lineup. I mean, just like play 150 lineups. I played 75 so-and-so lineups. I was double the field. And you look at those 75 lineups, and they're horrible. So who cares if you're over the field or below? It doesn't matter. Slick, how did your showdown process you showed us work out? Fine. The Chiefs Chargers slate, I did well. I did well enough. I mean, it's showdown. If you don't win first, it's not well. It's not good enough, right? Showdown. If you play large field in showdown, it's like you either win first or you lose. That's it. You're done, right? You play that 3 times a week or something or whatever. You hope to bink once, and that's it. And you're going to lose most of the other times. I mean, that's DFS in general. So you never use any T-Max. So you never use any type of formula. No, I never use any type. I literally have never used the formula ever in DFS. 7 years. I've never plugged numbers into a formula. You know why? Because there's no such formula that exists. To determine ownership, to determine what? What are we determining? What formula would we be determining? This is what I would do. Okay? I'm going to go in. Okay, let's build rules. What formula would there be? You're looking for magic that doesn't exist. Okay? Okay. Let's take a look at the wide receivers on this coming or whatever. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use a very extreme exaggeration. Okay? Fantasy points. Cooper Kupp has a median of 26 fantasy points. If he was 99% owned, 99% owned, let's change his ownership to 99. Just change it right there. He's going to be 99% owned. Okay? The top lineup that you can make, right? The top median lineup, so we're just talking about median, is 142.8. It doesn't even have Cooper Kupp in it. Okay? At 133 percentage points of ownership. Okay? There's no Cooper Kupp lineup that could beat that. So you should never play Cooper Kupp at 99% owned. Right? Are you going to find, how many lineups are you going to find? If we're going to have to reduce this to I can't play a lineup that's over 130. Let's just say there's no number 130. I'm going to go put in 130 right here, a max of 130. I'm going to build. I'm not even going to stack lineups. There's no stacks. There's no nothing. Doesn't even matter. I'm going to leave this on 3. I'm going to put it on 100. Okay. How much Cooper Kupp do you think I get in this 100? It's a very easy answer. It's a very easy answer. I'm running 100 lineups, and I set Cooper Kupp's ownership at 99%. But I can't build a lineup that has a higher ownership sum of 130. How much Cooper Kupp do you think is going to end up in these lineups? Let's see. I don't expect to see any, right? Let's just make sure. Stafford, Higbee. Let's look at Stafford, Higbee, right? You get some of those. You get no Cooper Kupp. Okay. Now let's do the opposite. Cooper Kupp is 0.1% owned. Okay. How many lineups does he show up in? When our max is 130. It's obviously not going to be 0. He's a 0.1% owned player that has the highest raw points on the entire slate. Right. Not the best point per dollar value. I mean, he's still up there, but not the ultimate best. But he's a guy that has that projection, and he's like, no one's going to own him. Right? You go through. Based on 130. But did I do this right? Let's see. Do I have no, I don't have stacks. Build rules, max lineup ownership. Make sure I get everything in here. Player groups. Let's fitting in other play. Yeah, here's Cooper Kupp right here. Okay. Okay, you're 21%. Right? So you're getting 21% of him at 0.1% owned. to fit into lineups that are under 130, right? Because he's not necessarily the best point per dollar projected because he's so expensive. What formula am I using? Because in order to come up with that formula, you'd have to run this for literally every player in the player pool and how they all affect all the other players in the player pool. So what formula is there for this other than these blunt methodologies to use? There's no formula. And every slate would be different. If this was a 5-game slate, dramatically different than a 10-game slate, right? 4-game slate with 2 separate 2 games with late swap, maybe even different than that. This is baseball, different than that. Like everything's different every slate. Oh, they DK accidentally priced Devontae Adams at the minimum price. Well, now that's a completely different slate also. No matter the next. Oh, there's a lot of games with high totals. A lot of games with low totals. 2 different slates. What formula? There's no formula. Let me be clear. There is a formula. Okay? It requires you to have probably some type of advanced computer degree to do. If you're nerdy tenor or whistles, go woo, there's a formula. So I want to be technically correct. Yes, there's, if you want to call that a formula. So what you're asking for, however, is what numbers do I plug in to get the right answer? And I'm like, really doesn't work that way. That's kind of like saying, it's kind of like saying, I got a couple of pieces of metal and some nails. How do I build a racing car from this? And you go, well, you can't build a racing car from that. Yeah, you could build something that has little wheels and you could probably go down a little alley on, like a little cardboard, like a little skateboard type of thing. You ain't building a racing car with it. Like, well, how do I build a racing car with it? It's like, well, I got to learn how to build a racing. You got to learn how to build cars first, right? Like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. It's like, well, do you have an advanced degree in physics? It's like, no, it's just going into a tube and going up in the air. It's like, no, these are astronauts have PhDs in physics, and aerodynamics and all that. It's like you have to learn all of that in order to do what they do, right? So it's the same thing here with, like, do you want to, like, whistles go woo? It's literally his PhD thesis is in optimization. Like that is literally what he does for a living, right? So like he looks at lineup HQ and goes, "Wow, I could build something 400 times better than this." Why? Because that's his skill. That's what he learned. That's what his field is. So like, what optimizer does he use? No, he uses this dude. He programs all the stuff on his own, right? And he'll look at these type, and he'll look at lineup HQ and go, well, this is a nice blunt tool, nice user interface. Like, not the best way to do it, right? But it gives someone that doesn't know what he knows on how to build optimization stuff a fighting chance. It's like, yeah, there are blunt ways. Yeah, you're right. You set that there, you set that here, and you could come up with competitive lineups, right? But there's also, he'll look and go, there's tons of ways that all this gets screwed up, right? We talk about clumping. We talk about exploiting people that don't know how to use tools like this correctly, right? That's, I focus on people that can't use these tools because they think they know, but they don't. Like, that's what whistles would look at and go, yeah, the problem with using these tools is that if you don't know what you're doing, you could actually end up with worse lineups, right? But he does it his way, and he programs it all himself. Ara Abdesian, can this tool build cash lineups? Yeah, sure. I mean, you just press one button. There's the cash lineup. You're done. I mean, you could build a cash lineup like without any optimizer. Just play the highest projected lineup. You're done. So yeah, so anytime you have anyone in the player pool, right, you could X out. You go, oh, I don't want to play Chris Olave. Well, then X him out and then just run it again. All it's doing is solving a knapsack problem. That's it. That's all it's doing. Is that the best cash lineup? Well, it's the highest median lineup. That's all it is. So it's the tool doesn't do anything. The tool, Lineup HQ, is a knapsack problem solver. That's it. That's all it is, with constraints. That's all it does. Well, I don't want to play this guy and that guy. Okay, well then rip them out, and then Lineup HQ just sitting there going, I'm going to solve for the highest median number on this number, this F points column. It doesn't even know it doesn't know the players. It doesn't know anything. Anytime you say, well, it likes this, it doesn't like anyone. It doesn't do anything. It's just these are the inputs. If I took down someone's projection, it's going to like them less. Why? Because the number's lower. It's like the tool has no brain in it, and it doesn't care about range of outcomes. It doesn't care about ownership. It doesn't care about anything. It's just, how do I jam in all these F points into a lineup given the salary and positional constraints? That's all it is. And it will do that until you interfere and say, well, you do that, but you can't do this, right? Give me as many of those FPTS column numbers you can, but you need to have a quarterback and a wide receiver together. It's like, okay. Right? Because then it can't make this line. It looks at the first lineup and goes, oh, well, it doesn't have that, so I got to go to the next one. Right? That's what it sounds like. And if you're telling me it's like, oh, well, I need 50% of this guy and 20% of that guy, and like it's going to just try to make those lines. Just, okay, I'll make the first one. This is the highest F points. Then the second one, well, I can't put this guy in because you told me that I can only have him in 10% of my lineup. That's all it's doing. It's not picking and choosing anything. It's just like whatever input you put in, it's going to give you whatever the knapsack problem solver would give you for that with those limitations. That's it. It's not magic. That's why all of this is blunt. All of this is based on heuristics. So yes, like getting back to the very beginning, you could build a lineup that's plus EV with any player in the player pool. And reasonable. I'm not talking about injured guys. Even though then that's not, technically you could still build plus EV lineups, even with a guy that's going to guarantee to get a 0. They're really cheap, maybe. Depends on the format. Depends on what you're doing. But you can pick any guy you want. You can pick anyone you want in the pool. You could start from anywhere. Right? I could scroll all the way down. I could go to the worst player. The worst projected player. What's the worst projected player? Ben Ellison at tight end. All right? So I put in Ben Ellison at tight end. I don't know who he is at Minnesota, maybe probably on the practice squad. If I press the optimize button right here, all it's going to do is give me the knapsack problem solver, give me the best lineup that has him in it for projection. 135.56. Allen, Fournette, Mixon, Dortch, Olave, Cup, Ellison, Hawkinson, Commanders. That's 135.56. What's the optimal? 142. So, like, to play Ellison, you're giving up like 7 fantasy points. Median-wise, which is probably not the greatest idea, but you still have a lineup that projects for 135. If Ben Ellison at 2,500 at almost pretty much no ownership, you'll be the only one with them. If Ellison goes out and catches 2 touchdowns and all the other chalk matches, you win the Millie Maker. There you go. You're done. So you can play whatever this guy's name is. I don't even know. You want to play Stanley Morgan in your lineup? Play Stanley Morgan in your lineup. Right? I don't even know if I can plug him in. You play Stanley Morgan. Can you play 2 of those? Now your projection starts going down. But obviously, if you're going to play a guy that projects for like 7 points lower than everyone else, the rest of your lineup has to project. You're going to be playing a lot of chalk in that lineup because you need to raise your projection up, right? So you could start with any player you want. You could start with not a player. You could start by going, okay, I'm going to go up to the top, right? I'm going to go up here. I'm just like, I'm not going to play Mixon. I'm not going to play Adams. I'm not going to play Tyreek Hill. For whatever. Just like, I'm not going to play. You take a look at here. I can't. Josh Jacobs, I can't stand playing that guy, right? You decide to X him out. And then, I mean, like, okay. Well, what's the best line from there? 141.57. Allen, Fournette, Cook, Olave, Cooks, Diggs, Juwan Johnson, Hawkinson, and Command. Okay. These are all projected decent lineups. So, I mean, if you could start with the other side. Don't play whoever you want. Right? Play whoever you don't want or whatever it is. Decide, these are the people that I'm Xing out. Yeah, sure. You can still build lineups that are fine otherwise. The chalkier they are, that means you're going to get more contrarian. And the higher projected they are, the more you're going to have to try to raise up that projection. But like, you could start from any point if you're building like that. I try to build all at once so I can just look at lineups individually. Joe Van Normandia, how does your stack setting methodology change when you're building lineups competitors are likely to have compared to building candidate lineups? I try to build the ones that they're likely to have. Build the way that you think that you're competitive. I do multiple sets. Okay? Multiple sets. Remember, I am building tens of thousands of lineups. I'm not trying to get all the lineups that are the candidates in a 300 set of lineups. I'm doing 300 sets because 300 is the max on Lineup HQ. I'm doing 300, and I'm using one stack combination. Right? I'm using one construction type for 300 lineups. How many construction types are there? Typically somewhere between 4, 5, 6, 8, maybe. I'm building 300 for each of them. Right? I'm building 300 for different ownership bands. 300 for different I'm literally building thousands upon thousands upon thousands of lineups. So it's like building lineups your competitors have. That's what I'm doing. Keep on building those lineups. Lineups. You know, you could crank out 300 lineups, no problem. A couple of minutes. You throw them into my theory of DFS tools and just keep on compiling them. Right? And then you see what commonalities, what players stick together, whatever. You group stuff out, and then you can start building candidate lineups that look different from that. How different? It depends on your risk tolerance. Maybe I'll have some that aren't that different and some that are very different. And I built 3,000 lineups to choose from there. That has nothing to do with the tools that playing max exposures or anything. There's no magic settings in Lineup HQ. I'm just going to keep on repeating that. If you were to do my process and see me, if I did the process every single day, okay, let's be clear. If I did the process for NFL, let's say we had a 12-game NFL slate every single day, and you sat behind me and you saw my process and you looked at the numbers that I put in every single day, I'm going to repeat this very, very clearly. Every single day, these numbers would be different. They would never be the same. Never. Zero days would be the same. If I were to show you what they ended up as, and also they changed throughout. I'm building 300 lineups that look like this. I'm building 300 lineups that look like that. I'm building 300 lineups that look like this. I've changed these numbers 700 times in one day. Okay? I'm exaggerating, probably not 700. And built plenty of stats, and maybe built a set and go, I don't see a lot of this, right? And decide to disregard it. Maybe on a certain slate, I'm getting way too much of something, and I'm like, I gotta increase the range of outcomes of wide receivers. Oh, so you set your wide? Do I set it originally at 20? No, I set it at nothing. Only until I see the output till I go, okay, this doesn't look that representative. Well, how do you know that it's not representative? I don't know. I make a judgment call. I judge it. I look and go, this doesn't seem right. Right? Okay, so let's I'm getting way too much of Barkley. How could I not get it as much of Barkley? Well, I could just cap Barkley, but I could also increase the randomness of running backs up. And then see what happens there. And maybe I do that and I still get too much of it. Okay, that didn't do anything for me, right? Maybe I'm playing too many, maybe there's too much running back in the flex. So okay, well, I'm going to increase that to what? I'm going to do that. Does that mean that those are the lineups that I'm playing? No, but in order to get the output that I want, all the tool is I look at the output and go, is that the output that I want? The answer is no. Well, then there's what settings do I have to do to get the output that I want? Do I put a minimum on it? Sometimes on some of these groups, I'm grouping out too many people, and the ownership numbers are like nothing. Like they're so low projected that I have to put a minimum 40. Give me a minimum of 40% owned in my entire line. Sometimes I don't need to do that. So if you ask me, what settings do you put in? There's no, there's no answer to that question. The question doesn't make any sense. How many nails do you put in a piece of wood? That's what you're asking. How many nails do you put in a piece of wood? And if you're a construction person or something, would probably say, well, what are you building? I mean, how many how big is it? Right? You're talking about the side of a house? Or are you talking about a drawer of a desk? I mean, like, how many nails? There's no number. They would look at you and go, how would you? There's no number. Anytime I put nails in wood, I put 16. Like, that would sound stupid. So no matter what, no matter if they're building the side of a sky size, whatever, a 5-story wooden, whatever the hell you're doing, you're only putting 16 nails in. Good luck. Good luck if you live in there, right? It's probably not going to hold the wall down, right? For 16 nails. You're putting together a little jewelry case or something like that. 16 nails would probably be way too much, right? So you can't answer questions that way of how many nails, right? How long do you drive? Well, it depends on where you're going, right? If I'm going to the store, it takes me 3 minutes to drive. If I'm going to Chicago, it takes me 5 hours to drive. So to understand the questions that you're asking is how long do you drive? How much gas do you put in your car? In total? In what? I mean, like, you could put 1 gallon. You're not driving to Chicago 1 gallon of gas, but you could. So, like, what is what you'd always do? Like, there's nothing. It depends on where you're going. Do you take a right or a left at the end of this? Well, if I'm going there, I'm taking a left. If I'm going there, I'm taking a right. But I can take a right and end up going around and end up getting to the other place anyway. But like that's what the questions look like from my perspective. That's why you have to change your mindset. You have to figure out. You should be able to hand build a plus EV lineup by just looking at projections and ownership. That's it. You should be able to say, what contest am I playing? Let me hand build. I can do so. I could hand build those 18 lineups if I wanted to. That's what I used to do. I did that for years. So hand build those lineups and go, I think this is a good, okay, add this and a run back and whatever, and this thing works, and I got this, and based on the project, and then you add it up. Take a pen and pencil, whatever, add up the numbers. So you get the projection and the ownership or whatever. Even if you want to do the floor and the ceiling, if you want to do whatever the hell you want, add it up. Okay? Now build another one by hand, and build another one by hand, and build another one by hand, and build another one by hand. Do that for 3 years. Okay? Then once you're good at that, then go to a lineup optimizer and lineup HQ. Now that you've built the lineup so often by hand, get the optimizer to do it for you. Those exact lineups, like build 20 lineups by hand. Like do that for this Sunday. So you can practice literally with lineup HQ right now. Hand build 20 lineups, and then go into lineup HQ and look at the 20 lineups that you built by hand. That you look and you go, I think these are good. That you added up the projections manually yourself, and go, okay, how do I get lineup HQ to build those exact 20 lineups? Your goal is not to build better. Your goal is to build those exact lineups that you could press this build button up here. You could put 20 right there. And the 20 that show up are the exact 20 that you hand built. Okay? It's probably going to be impossible for you to do. I've gotten good enough that I could probably do that and get 18 of them or something in that range. Maybe 1 or 2 would be off by a defense or something, like it's still just slightly off. But you should be able to do that. Right? Because you're just telling the thing what to do. It's like, oh, I got half my lineups have Dalvin Cook. Okay, well, that's kind of easy to put in the number 50 there. Right? That's already based on what I wanted, the lineups that I wanted. I don't start with I want 50%. I don't know. How do you put numbers in without even seeing the lineups that you're building? You see the lineups first and you go, okay, I want more of these types of lineups. So how do I get the optimizer to build more of those types of lineups? Well, I got to tell it to not give me more of this and give me less of that. I mean, that's what you're doing. Just like the nails in the wood. It's like, okay, well, you got a construction guy with a hammer and the nails. And you're like, well, I want to build a bookcase. Right? If you don't tell them that you're building a bookcase, what is he supposed to do? Just going to randomly put nails into wood, and go, here you go. Here's this abstract piece of art. And you go, well, why isn't it a bookcase? It's like, because you didn't tell me that you're building a bookcase. Right? Then you build a bookcase, then that person builds a bookcase, and you go, how come there's only 3 shelves? I want a 5-shelf bookcase. So it's like, well, you have to tell me that you're building a 5-shelf bookcase so I can build the 5 shelves for you. That's the same thing here. That's what all the numbers are. That's what all it is. It doesn't know anything. Scorpion McScorp, what do you think of a rule that in your lineup that mandates at least 2 players before 10% if the chalk for the week looks really good? I think that's horrible. Once you say that you have a rule, then I would think it's horrible. So no, I would not do that. It's like repeating the same thing over and over again, and you're wondering why people lose at DFS. So hopefully you'll learn from this. Feel free to give those thumbs if you want. And yeah, and I'll be here tomorrow answering your DFS strategy questions as always on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.